Evelyn Park stood beneath the glass trees of Central Plaza and watched the city move like a slow tide. She wore a dress that caught light and threw it back in soft colors. People gave her space. She was rich, famous, and not quite like other parents. Her daughter, Maya, sat in a small, elegant wheelchair at Evelyn's side. Maya's legs were thin and still. She smiled a lot, but her smile seemed to live more in her eyes than in her walk. They had come to the plaza for a charity morning. Cameras and drones floated above, hungry for small, human moments that would go big on feeds. Evelyn liked to help. She also liked to be seen helping. The crowd closed in as the servers handed out snacks. Maya watched everything with calm curiosity. Evelyn lifted a porcelain plate of fresh fruit. The plate was from a set that had been in her family for generations. It was delicate and pale like moonlight. A child reached too far for a piece. Evelyn moved to steady the plate. The crowd leaned in. The plate slipped. It spun once, slow as an old coin. A gasp ran through the crowd. Time narrowed. The plate fell toward the marble and toward the child's small foot. For a breath, no one moved. Then a thin man in a plain jacket pushed through the crowd and dove. He caught the falling plate just before it hit the stone. The plate hit his hands and fractured in a soft, ringing sound. He rose with a shard pressed to his palm, white dust on his sleeve. The little boy rubbed his foot and hiccuped. The danger was over. The man's name was Jack Turner. He was ordinary in a city full of spectacle mud on his shoes, a faded jacket, plain hair. Yet his hands moved like someone who had done 1,000 small, careful things. People broke into applause. Cameras flashed. Jack only smiled and handed the child back to its parent. Maya watched him with a bright, curious light. Her fingers found the edge of Jack's sleeve and held it like a secret. Evelyn, surprised and grateful, invited the man to sit near the fountain. He hesitated. He did not like attention. But he sat, because Maya tugged him with her small, steady hand. They drank tea while pigeons strutted and the city hummed. Jack was quiet and careful with his words. He had once been a medic and a mechanic in small clinics. He fixed things and helped people. When Maya laughed at a pigeon's sudden flight, Jack laughed too, his voice soft and real. Evelyn watched him. There was a calm in him she had never bought with money. Reporters recorded every small motion. A clip of the rich alien mother and the humble stranger would spread. But in that small circle by the fountain, cameras felt like a breath far away. Evelyn listened to Jack tell a short, honest story about fixing a neighbor's heater. He told it without show. That made Evelyn feel oddly light. She had everything: credit lines, private doctors, a lab hidden under her house, but she had not felt light in a long time. When the crowd thinned, Maya pushed her wheelchair closer to Jack and said, "Would you come by tomorrow?" Her voice was steady, like she had thought about the words many times. Jack blinked. He had not expected the invitation. He wanted to keep his life small and simple. But there was something in the way Maya's eyes held him, a hope he could not refuse. Evelyn offered tea and a real thank you. Jack nodded and said he would come. The cameras caught the moment. Millions would watch later. For now, the three of them left the plaza together, the crowd splitting like water around them. At home, Evelyn had glass walls that let the city become art and a private life that the city could never fully enter. She folded the broken plate into a drawer without anger. Money could replace the plate, but the feel of it on Jack's palms mattered more than any replacement. Maya sat on the living room rug with a small stuffed bird. She touched the seam and hummed. Evelyn watched them both with a complicated look: pride, shame, and a fierce hope. That night, Evelyn could not sleep. The city under the glass buzzed like distant bees. She thought about the way Jack had moved and how Maya's fingers had held him. Her doctors had tried everything. Her machines had whispered numbers and charts. The best tech in 3 systems had not given Maya this small, bright laugh. Yet a stranger on a park bench had. Jack walked home under lamplight, thinking of the warm tea, the child's laugh, and the way the plate had fallen. He did not know that his simple choice to go to a stranger had been the first small push against very large things. He did not know screens would replay his hands, or that he had stepped, without plan, into a space where money, power, and care would collide. At dawn, Jack woke with a list of small things to do. He put on a jacket that had seen better days, and he made his way back to Evelyn's house with a paper bag of old comic books for Maya and a sandwich from his favorite vendor. He felt oddly nervous, like a boy with a new pair of shoes. When Evelyn opened the heavy front door and Jack stepped inside, he did not see only luxury or cameras. He saw a tired mother who wanted one honest miracle. Maya reached out and touched Jack's hand again. The house hummed with quiet machines, and somewhere under the floor, a small, ancient device warmed as if it had heard a wish. Part 1 closes on Jack standing in the doorway, a stranger who caught a plate, holding a small bag and a larger promise. Outside, the city went on, unaware that a single small act had begun to move the world. Evelyn did not mean to invite strangers into the room below her house. Her private lab sat under glass and marble. It held things she had bought from distant worlds. She kept the lab locked with codes and old promises. A small case on a high shelf read, in her careful hand, "Prototype do not sell." She had never used it in public. But that morning she opened the case for Jack and Maya. The band was thin and plain. It looked like a child's bracelet made from silver threads. Evelyn placed it on the small table and watched Jack's face. He did not look like a man who feared the rich. He looked like a man who feared nothing more than losing what he cared for. Maya sat very still, her eyes fixed on the band. Evelyn touched the skin behind Maya's ear and felt her daughter tremble. "This may not work," she said, but her voice shook with hope. She had tried every test and every doctor. Machines spit out charts and cold numbers. This band had only one promise: try. Jack knelt beside Maya. He took her hand like he had always known her. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded, her mouth small and fierce. Evelyn slipped the band behind Maya's ear. It hummed softly, like a small insect chirping in the dark. For a long second nothing happened. Then Maya gasped. Her toes twitched. A bright tear slid down Evelyn's cheek. The twitch was small, so small a machine might call it noise. But to Evelyn it was a word. Her breath fogged in the lab air. They ran tests. The instruments in the lab glowed and wrote numbers on black screens. Doctors from 3 systems called in by secure line asked questions in fast voices. Evelyn held the phone with a hand that did not shake. "Keep everyone ready," she said. "We need time and trust, not headlines." Time gave them a small gift. The band seemed to do what it promised. When it sang quietly against skin, it sent a pattern like a lullaby through old nerves. Muscles that had slept for years answered. Maya bent her foot and then her knee. Her smile came like a sunrise through glass. Jack watched like a man who had seen too much to be surprised by miracles, but even he could not hide the brightness in his eyes. He cleaned a spill and hummed an old song Maya liked. The song seemed to matter. Evelyn noticed it. She noticed how simple sounds in Jack's voice made the band sing sweeter. News does not sleep. A camera in a park had already shared Jack's small heroics. The clip of him catching the plate rode the morning feeds. When they learned the band worked, journalists circled like gulls. Corporations called, their voices polite and sharp. Scientists asked for samples. A government office requested a closed meeting. Money and law reached for the band like hands in a dark. Evelyn refused offers that smelled like cages. She said no to patents and to public auctions. Not for sale, she told a man who wore a lemon yellow tie and smiled with teeth that did not know mercy. The man's smile became a thin line. He left a card with a logo and a polite threat. That night a woman in a gray suit came to the house with a different tone. She spoke of sharing and the good of many worlds. Her voice had silk and a knife hidden inside. Evelyn shut the door. She told her staff to lock every gate. "I will not trade my child," she said. The staff bowed and did as they were told. Outside, the city breathed. In the thin hours after midnight, a small figure moved through the shadowed garden. Cameras on the outer fence blinked, but the figure wore clothes that hid faces from sensors. It left nothing but a mark on the old garden wall, a small symbol carved with care. Evelyn recognized it. The mark belonged to a treaty long dead. It belonged to men who thought they could buy the future. Jack found the mark at dawn. He pressed his palm to the carving and felt a prickle, like static under skin. "They know," he said quietly. He had fought in places where laws meant little. He had seen how power turned kind people into teeth. Now he felt something like a shadow pass over his small hope. Word spread too fast. The feeds called Maya the walking girl before she could walk across a room. People sent gifts and prayers and angry messages. Some voices said humans held secret keys in their DNA. Those words frightened old leaders. Fear smelled like money to some and like war to others. A corporate team asked to study the band in a lab with white walls and quiet rules. Evelyn refused. She would not let her daughter become a headline or a test subject. "We learn here, with care," she said. "Not under glass tables with tags." The refusal brought more pressure. Legal papers floated like vultures. Men with suits studied contracts while their ships gathered quietly above city limits. Jack started to teach the small staff how to guard a child. He taught them how to move soft and fast. He showed them how to hold a door so it did not slam. He fixed a broken lock with a strip of wire and a promise. He laughed sometimes, low and surprised, as if joy was a small theft he had not planned to commit. Maya learned to wobble and then to step with a cane that felt like a friend. She practiced in the hall, under soft lamps. Jack walked behind her like a lighthouse. Evelyn watched and sometimes touched a hidden stone in her pocket, a family token she had kept for luck. The house smelled of coffee and new hope. At dusk a low hum rolled through the sky. The neighbors turned their heads. A ship far above had changed course. It did not roar like a warship. It moved like a question. Jack stood on the roof, watching metal blink against stars. He thought of the mark on the wall and of men who measure lives like price tags. He put his hand on Maya's shoulder and said, "We will not let them take her." His voice had no bravado. It had steady care. Maya smiled and took a careful step. Part 2 closes on the sound of a distant engine, a single light rising in the dark, and the small house below it holding a secret that many wanted and few understood. They opened the doors of power slowly, like men who hoped no one would notice. Lawyers came first. They sat in Evelyn's bright room and smiled with too many teeth. They asked calm questions about the band, about trials, about ownership. Evelyn listened. She had money, and she had lawyers too. But she would not sign papers that made her daughter a product. News anchors turned the story into a cold game. They showed photos of Maya learning to move her toes. They ran slow-motion clips of Jack catching the plate. People argued online. Some called Jack a hero. Others called him a charlatan. A loud voice claimed the band worked because of an odd human gene. That rumor spread like wildfire. Fear rose on the feeds. Fear makes people act fast and badly. Old empires grew quiet and sharp. A secret committee in a far capital considered rules they had never used. They asked if humans should be tested. They wrote lists with small, neat letters that smelled of danger. Evelyn read one of the lists and felt her chest go very tight. She understood the world's hunger for the band. She understood how easy it would be to lose her child. Jack had never wanted the spotlight. He had fixed heaters and helped in clinic halls. He had held hands of people who died and people who healed. He knew how systems broke people. Now he saw words like study and share that meant cages and needles in practice. He kept his face calm. He taught the staff how to answer questions with simple truth. He taught them how to close a door without slamming it shut. Then a child from the neighborhood vanished. No one saw how it happened. A white van showed on a single camera for one dull beat. The city police scratched their heads. People in the building whispered and barred their doors. Evelyn ordered every camera to search every angle. Her guards ran outside and checked every alley. The neighborhood felt cold, like a hand pressed against its forehead. Fear became fury. Evelyn closed the house. She did not allow interviews. She sent her best medics out to help search. Jack walked the streets until his feet hurt. He asked questions in doorways. He learned the missing child had played near the park where the plate had fallen. The same park where Jack had acted without thinking. The same park that now had feeds replaying the small human kindness over and over. The lost child's face made the stakes ugly and real. Men with suits used the fear. A corporate team from Sterling Dynamics offered help and promises. They said they had ships and laboratories and experts. They spoke soft and precise. They wanted the band for study and safety. Evelyn's answer was a hard no. She would not hand her daughter to any company that measured life in ledgers. Jack found allies who smelled of the street and hospital corridors. They called themselves care. They were nurses, medics, old mechanics, and neighbors who had no patience for suits. They met in basements lit by single bulbs. Their leader, Laura, had worked with Jack in a field clinic once. She spoke plainly, "We watch. We help. We do not let them take people." Jack felt the warmth of their small, steady convictions. He had not expected to lead. But when people needed quiet courage, he stepped forward. Sterling Dynamics did not only use offers and smiles. They bought headlines. They hinted that Evelyn might be selfish. They suggested a public trial to decide who could use the band. Their lawyers wrote long letters and used big words to make small things look legal. The press asked Evelyn if Maya belonged to the world. Evelyn said no. She said Maya belonged to her, to Jack, and to a life that would not be auctioned. A famous surgeon arrived with a clean voice and a cleaner plan. He offered a trip to a clinic at the rim of known systems. He promised full study, wide sharing, and global health. He smiled like a man who believed in his good intentions. Evelyn listened and felt the old ache of hope and the sharp bite of doubt. The surgeon's promise smelled right. It also smelled like surrender. That night, someone broke a fence 2 blocks away. A small team tried a silent take. Guards chased shadows and fired warning shots. The attackers fled with a black van and a badge that matched the old mark carved in Evelyn's wall. The mark was no accident. Men from places that had traded with empires now reached for a prize. In response, CARE held open meetings in secret. They trained people to guard babies and old men who could not run. They taught how to hide tracks and how to patch wounds. Jack taught soft first aid and how to carry a child through smoke. The lessons were small and human. The training made people feel less afraid. Then an encrypted courier arrived at Evelyn's door. He was careful, his hands trembled a little. He left a small drive and 2 words, "Watch alone." Evelyn locked the door, dimmed the lights, and fed the drive into a screen. Grainy images played. The footage showed clinics in distant systems. It showed strange machines and bright lights. It showed patients many species after experiments that left them still and hollow. A nurse hummed in one clip while a device moved. In another, someone in a suit reached for a child and closed the shutter on a crying face. Evelyn's fingers went white around the glass. Her mouth made a noise that sounded like breaking. Jack stood behind her, and for the first time she saw fear in him, not for himself but for what men might do to a child who could make a world change. "We are different," Evelyn whispered, but the words sounded weak in the room. She did not mean better. She meant human in a way that made men both hopeful and dangerous. Jack put his hand on her shoulder and did not let go. Outside, above the city, a small patrol ship kept its distance like a predator that had found a scent. Inside the house, people fed hope and fear into plans. They would not hand things over. They would not yield without a fight that was smarter than a brawl. They would not let a child become a commodity. Part 3 closes with a street meeting in the shadowed park. Lanterns light a ring of faces. Lara looks at Jack and says, "They will try to buy the world's permission next. We should buy time instead." Jack looks at Maya walking in the lamplight with her cane. He nods, and his eyes are steady. The city waits. The fleet above watches. The first real choices are coming. They moved quietly, like people who knew noise would bring soldiers. Jack and Lara met in a low room under an old bakery. Their faces were tired but steady. Around them sat nurses, coders, and one old mechanic who smelled of oil and soap. They called themselves CARE. Their plan was simple: find proof that the band worked because of CARE, not because a company owned a secret. Sterling Dynamics had a big archive in the city. It held test logs, videos, and reports. Officials and lawyers called it research. To Jack and Lara it smelled like a lock on a door the world needed open. That night they slipped into the archive. The guards were many, but the route Jack picked was older than cameras. He crawled under vents and around lights. Lara watched the hall with a small flashlight and a steady hand. The old mechanic used a key he had copied years ago when systems were kinder. Inside, rows of servers hummed like sleeping bees. Jack found files that wore sterile names. He searched until his hands ached. Then he saw a folder labeled with a case number. Inside were clips of tests done on other species. The cameras had recorded nurses humming, hands holding, and patients whose bodies answered when someone did not look away. The images were simple. No glitter. No big machines. Just hands and voices and small moves. They copied everything. The old mechanic joked weakly about how many locks they had picked and how few people they needed to help. Lara typed till her eyes blurred. When they left, the city still slept. The files went to feeds and to people who could not be bought. At first the world did not know what to do with them. Then the clips began to make sense. People watched a short video where a nurse touched an alien arm and sang a low sound. The alien's muscles relaxed and it moved. Another clip showed a child of a species no one in the city had seen, calm in the lap of a stranger. The pattern was clear: care helped. Care gave bodies a reason to answer. Sterling Dynamics reacted like a wounded animal. It bought ads and filled pages with lawyers' words. They said the tapes were fake. They said Jack had stolen data. They paid for pundits to talk about security and danger. The company tried to make doubt into a wall. But doubt fell apart fast when other people shared small stories. A nurse in a mining town posted a video of her humming to an old man until his fingers moved. A janitor remembered holding a dying patient's hand until the patient breathed easier. The phrase human edge began to mean something true and quiet, how people could bring care the machines could not. Maya walked across a small stage at a charity event. The lights were soft and warm. Jack stood at the edge with Laura and the care team in the front row. Evelyn sat with her hands folded and watched every step. Maya used a cane, then a second step, then another. Her face had a sort of astonished joy. Cameras rolled, but what they caught was simple. Maya stopped in the center and spoke into the microphone in a voice that trembled but held. "Someone looked at me," she said. They did not look away. The crowd did not cheer like a stadium. They cried in seats and whispered in the aisles. People sent small messages to clinics and to neighbors. The movement spread not by orders but by short acts: a stranger holding a bag, a teacher staying late, a driver giving a ride. The world changed in tiny ways, and those little changes made a path. Sterling's response grew sharper. They tried to buy lawmakers and to rewrite rules. A senator proposed a law to keep certain devices private under national security. Critics called it a power grab. In the halls of government, voices rose. The people who wanted care to be free pushed back. Small protests grew. Nurses marched in clogs and coats. Families held candles outside company towers. The Shared Care Accord, an idea to protect people from markets that turned bodies into products, began to be discussed openly. Not everything changed in words. One night, dark ships moved like knives above the city. Men tried a quick raid on Evelyn's house. Guards fought in the gardens while cameras showed only flashes. The attackers used silent weapons and tools that jammed cameras. Jack and the care team met them outside the white lights. The fight was ugly and close. Smoke tasted of plastic and old bread. Jack felt a line of fire sing past his cheek. Laura grabbed a child and dove for cover. Nurses closed wounds under the shadow of a broken statue. When the attackers fled, they left a small badge on the driveway. The same symbol carved months earlier into Evelyn's wall. The mark told a story: this was not random. Someone powerful had ordered a quick strike and failed. The city breathed. The guards cheered and cried in the same sound. It was a small victory, but it proved something: people could stand in front of machines and hold their ground. After that night, more doctors spoke out. Some left companies and joined care. Others opened tiny clinics, saying, "We will teach care first, then tools." Evelyn gave money to start clinics in poor neighborhoods. She hired teachers who taught hands and listening before they taught charts. Sterling Dynamics shrank from headlines. It still had money and lawyers, but the country's voice had shifted. People wanted clinics that taught how to hold hands, not patents that priced hope. The Shared Care Accord moved forward in small steps. It did not win everything at once. It made new rules that protected families from being bought and sold in legal papers. Part 4 closes on Jack and Laura sitting on a stoop at dawn. A mail carrier walked by and waved. Children played with a ball that was patched and old. Above them, the sky was clear. Laura laughed softly at something the old mechanic said. Jack watched the horizon where the patrol ships once hung. He felt tired and old in new ways. Yet he also felt like a man who had seen a door open. In the quiet, Maya walked to the corner and came back with 2 cups of tea on a tray. She handed one to Jack, who smiled and took it like a gift. The city would keep fighting. Men would still try to buy miracles. But for now, people had learned to reach out. That reach, small and steady, had already changed the world. They called it the afterwalk because nothing ended suddenly. The fight slowed and changed shape. Laws moved through halls and into papers. People argued late at night and made small promises in morning light. But the real change lived in small rooms, in clinics with chipped tiles and warm tea, where someone learned to hold another person until their body listened. Evelyn helped start a trust. She signed papers and cut checks without wanting to be a headline. She told the board, "Keep it honest. Teach care first." The trust bought old buildings and fixed them into clinics. The clinics were simple. They had soft lights, good chairs, and teachers who knew how to listen. They taught nurses to hum and parents to look without turning away. They taught mechanics to fix machines, not to hide them in locked vaults. Jack worked at the clinic in the old plaza. He did not want his name on a door. People still called the place Turner Care because it made them smile. He taught small classes, how to hold a hand that shakes, how to speak to someone who cannot speak back, how to carry a child through fear. He showed medics how to put care before data. He told stories about the plate and the day hands reached for the same thing. Laura kept watching. Her group, Care, became more than a secret basement team. They organized volunteers, fixed old ambulances, and sent teachers to small towns. Laura argued with leaders and sometimes with people who wanted quick fixes. She said, "We can build cheap and build right. We can teach people how to be human first." People listened. Sterling Dynamics changed too. It lost contracts and many clients. The company tried to remake itself. It gave grants to some clinics and shut down programs that had chased profit. Not everyone at Sterling changed. Some men and women kept old ideas. They argued that power was a tool. But the new law, the Shared Care Accord, made it harder to buy bodies or to lock away cures under patents. It did not stop every bad plan, but it made it harder for greed to hide behind papers. Maya grew taller and bolder. She walked with less help. Sometimes she ran a little, then stopped and laughed, surprised at how much noise her feet could make. She collected small things, a cracked cup, a faded ribbon, a toy that still worked after being mended. She learned how to teach younger kids to wobble and trust. People came to the plaza to see her. They did not come to stare. They came to learn how to reach. One summer day, Evelyn set a small picnic in the plaza. She spread a blanket under the glass trees and brought plates that had belonged to her family for a long time. She felt different about the plates now. They were not treasures to be shown. They were things people could break and then pick up together. A child ran past and bumped the table. A plate slipped free and fell toward the stone. For a second the air held its breath. Then many hands moved at once. A waiter, a nurse, a young father, a neighbor, and Jack reached. A clear, soft sound of breaking came, but the plate did not fall alone. People caught the pieces and held them like small promises. No cameras counted the moment. No company sold it. It was simply a dozen hands reaching because that is what people do. Maya stood and walked over without a cane. She picked up a larger piece and handed it to a child who looked scared. "We can fix things," she said. Her words were small and strong. The child nodded and smiled like someone who had been taught to try. Far above, patrol ships still moved in the sky. Old powers watched and counted. Some leaders still feared human kindness because it could not be sealed. They wrote notes and made plans. Power did not vanish. It changed its shape. But the seed of simple care had taken root in many places. The clinics spread slowly across systems. Teachers traveled to towns that had never seen a nurse humming to a patient. Small videos of hands and voices were shared in forums and in quiet groups. The phrase "look and do not look away" became a line people used when they taught. It was not a law. It was a habit. Jack married Lara's old friend, a woman named Nora, who had been a steady hand through the raids. They opened a small workshop beside the clinic that fixed old devices and taught kids how to keep things working. They had no flags or riches. They had a door always open and a kettle on the stove. Evelyn learned to sit with less armor. Her wealth did not leave her, but she used it differently. She gave space to voices who had been ignored. She learned to listen more than to speak. She would sometimes carry a small tray of tea to the clinic and pretend to be a helper. People forgave her mistakes and taught her how to be useful. Not all stories were gentle. Some families never healed from what happened to them. Some men still tried to buy power. But when they tried, whole neighborhoods stood in the way. Laws and clinics were only part of the answer. The other part was neighbors, small acts, and a stubborn refusal to let fear win. Years later, a child from a distant system asked Maya how she learned to walk. She smiled and said simply, "Someone looked at me and did not look away." The child repeated the line and ran to join other kids who were learning how to help. The galaxy did not become perfect. Old empires kept old habits. New machines still hummed. But the story of a plate, a band, and a stranger became a small truth that moved between worlds. People learned that care could be taught, that hands mattered, and that miracles sometimes begin when someone reaches, not to own, but to help. The final image is not of war or victory. It is of a plaza at sunset. Maya walks with a group of children. Jack picks up a piece of a broken plate and uses it to plant a small seed in a cracked pot. Evelyn stands nearby, hands in dirt. Around them, many people reach. Not for power. For each other.